What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Billy Collins here again with my co-host, Mr. Matt Dodge. What are we talking about?
Double standards.
The double standards.
It's not fair.
It's not fair. You know what is fair? For you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Matt, when we talk about double standards, what are we talking about?
So, a double standard is essentially Billy and I are exactly the same, but we're treated differently, right? I'm held to a higher standard or a lower standard than you are, right? I grew up in a house of 5 kids. You know, the oldest was, punished or held to a higher standard than the youngest, right? It could feel like it's not fair, right? So that's, to me, is what a double standard is, right? The same rule doesn't apply equally to each. That would be my...
Yeah, and that's a good way to look at it. But so, specifically, men and women.
That's probably the biggest,
double standard.
The biggest hot topic is, how men are treated and how women are treated, and why it's not fair. And I started writing on this because I was talking to a female who was saying something wasn't fair. And I told her, kind of called her flat out. I said, look, you don't have a problem with double standards. You have a problem with double standards that don't benefit you, right? For a double standard to I guess, exist, someone's getting preferential treatment over another. Well, if you're that someone getting the preferential treatment, you're not beating the drum to get rid of it. Prime example, we've all gone to a nightclub or a bar or whatever. I remember being in New York, and if you were a pretty female, you skipped the line, right? It's so much so that I remember I had a group of girls that I met. They were meeting out some of our friends, and they came to the front, and the bar guy, or the door guy said, okay, you can come in, the rest of you guys can't, right? To their face, right? So I'm sure in that group, that was a double standard. Wait, why can she go in and I can't?
Yeah.
The one that could go in, though, was like, sorry, kick rocks. Like, sorry, ladies. Hopefully, go get in the line,
Yeah, so especially when it comes to men and women, because we discussed this about the process of a man sleeping around is... This
is the #1 most cited double standard.
When it comes to man versus female.
Right, it is. And this, especially when you're younger, right? I remember hearing this first in like high school, right? How come if a man gets a lot of attention from women, right? It's always seen with a new hottie on his arm, he's considered the man, right? We call that person Billy, okay? And you're the man, right?
Yeah.
But if a girl does the same thing, she's what?
She's a slut.
She's a HOE, right? Or whatever. Hey. She is considered a woman of the streets. Right? And to the streets she shall return, right? So it's like, why is it okay for one and not the other? And I'm sure you've heard that.
Even because I'm a lot older than you, even when I was in school.
It's been going on forever.
Yeah, it's always, well, look at the Scarlet Letter.
No, you are older than me. You were there, you transcribed it.
I did. I wrote the book for him.
But give me the premise of that book.
So basically, the Scarlet Letter is A for adultery. But back then, guys, at that era, you're talking about men sleeping with slaves and it ran rampant everywhere.
Yeah.
But it was like, it was a blind eye. Now, this day and age, I guess, with the equality of men and women, it's a little less taboo.
Men and women do have equality, but they're not the same.
Yeah.
Right? So the #1 flaw to most double standards, at least with male and female, is this kind of blank slate equalism that a man and a woman are exactly the same. All right? And you may hear that and say, yeah, well, we are. Anything you can do, I can do better. Remember all those videos? It was like Michael Jordan and Mia Hamm.
Yeah.
I remember that stuff. And the reality is, we do have equal protection under the law. In some cases, right? We're both allowed to vote. We're both allowed to drive. There's not many things that I can do as a man that you can't do as a woman. But we are fundamentally different.
It's way different.
It's like I'm taking crazy pills when people argue. Like, it's like, have you ever met a man and met a woman? We are completely different. But if I believe they were the exact same, that's where the double standards come in.
And that's why I have this big, I despise the whole transgender man playing a woman's sport. I don't care if you want to transgender. That's your thing. As long as you don't bother me, do whatever the hell you want. But when it comes to MMA fighter who was a man for 28 years, now wants to be a female and go fight other females and crushing skulls. To me, it's just, that's tackiness. And the problem with that is our society allows that shit to happen.
I think it's a lot of lip service, and it's a very small percentage that are waving the loudest stick that have the megaphones, right? You go out on the street and interview people and say, hey, do you believe men should be able to fight women if they say I'm transitioning to a woman? Of course not.
Yeah.
Well, why not? Well, men are physically strong. I mean, it's just scientific proof, right? You can compare shoulder width to hips. I mean, we're built differently.
Speed, agility.
The average strength of a man is going to be far more than a woman. Why? Because of a little thing called testosterone that we produce. Now, women produce it at a small level, but if you take the lowest testosterone guy and the highest testosterone woman, the lowest is still going to be higher, right? And testosterone is what allows you to build muscle, right?
Yeah.
So, but if we believe they're the same, then men should be able to play against women, right? Mm-hmm. But it's just the common sense shows it's not the truth. You have 2 daughters and a son. I'm guessing they're a little bit different.
Yeah, a lot different.
I mean, it's kind of insane. So back to the Mac Daddy of double standards, right? Why are women considered promiscuous, like not to be desired, and men are it's actually like put notch on their belt, right? They're awesome if they do. Well, there's some scientific reasons for this.
I was going to say I would think it would be more of the DNA structure, because we discussed the Alexander the Great, that type DNA that's built in.
And also the fact that you could decide this year, I'm gonna get 10 women pregnant. By this time next year, I'm gonna have 10 babies. A woman can't do that.
Yeah.
Right? Women they can have one child usually within a year, unless she has twins or whatever. But one pregnancy cycle, if you will, right? So in that case, we are extremely different. But also, within the last, I'm not sure when DNA testing first.
I would say within the past 30 years. Yeah,
but it may have been, we'll call it 70 years. I don't know, right? But prior to that, a woman is 100% guaranteed the child is hers. 100%, right? I told you about a skit I want to do on like a Saturday Night Live skit or a Mad TV skit where it's based in like the Maury show, and it's men testing a bunch of women to see if they're the mother of the child.
Yeah, that would
right?
be.
Because how the moms.
It's
like, I think I would have known.
I think I did have the child.
So that's a huge difference. But up until very recently, when you look at the grand scheme of society, a man really had no way of knowing whether or not the child was theirs. And you can hear story after story of young maidens marrying older men with means, right? And they go and sleep with the stable boy to have their son, and they'll go lay with the man and pretend like it's theirs, right?
Yeah.
We've all seen those movies and those shows. So a promiscuous woman back in the day, that was a liability, right? Because if I'm going to have my seed, I want to know it's mine. Right, that's the actual definition of cuckolding, which is another thing that's big in the news. Don't be a cuck, if you will. The definition of cuckolding is another man raising another man's child unknowingly, right? Yeah. And I was just seeing a story where I believe it was out of Sweden where a nice guy, but he was married, he had 3 children, and when they were 18 or 20 or something, found out none of them were his. Right? None of them were his.
Could you imagine
just the ramifications of that, right? And just that, but that's a very real possibility, right? So throughout history, since recorded time, a woman who slept around was shunned, right? It was looked down upon. Why? Well, at a biological level, if you're sleeping with 100, how do I have any confidence that's going to be my child?
Right.
You had no way of knowing. You could, if you look at a child long enough, you could say, yeah, I kind of have their hair.
You can, especially if
nose,
your mind is wired
confirmation
to try
bias,
to see it.
yeah. Yeah, so that's a big reason. But there's also studies on men and women pair bonding, right? And they looked at the sexual partners of the man and of the women and whether or not it had an effect, right? When they got married, their ability to stay in that relationship. Well, it was and I'll have to find the study, but bottom line, the men, it didn't really affect them as much, right? If they had one partner or 50, it wasn't that big of a difference, but it was a massive difference with women, right? Their ability to pair bond, to stay faithful, stay loyal, and stay interested in that relationship, right? You always talk about the virgin bride. You don't hear about the virgin husband, right? It's been, throughout history, there's a lot of value on a woman's purity.
Do you think as guys tend to look down upon that because deep down that if a woman has been with a lot of men, there's a prejudgment, like, am I going to equal up to with the other guys that she's with? Am I holding my own?
There could be that. It comes down to what is your goal with. So if my goal is to get laid, well, the fact that you have slept around knows you have your the access to that
is easier. Is an easier path,
right? If you're a virgin, never. What's the name of that track star? She's like 38 now, but she went on record like a decade ago around the Olympics saying how, is it B.B. Jones? Something like that how she was a virgin, right? Well, if you're looking for a hookup, no strings attached hookup, that's not going to be the one. So if that's your goal, well then if she gets around, now assuming she's clean, right? You're not putting yourself at physical risk. Then that's going to be a plus, right? But there's a difference between a girl you want to just kind of ejaculate and evacuate, right? Versus someone you could see raising your children, right? And that's where those points come down, right? That's someone, a friend with benefit is not usually the same girl you bring to meet your parents, right? Because hey, this is short term. Is what it is. Someday I'll meet a woman that I want to settle down with. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and I often ponder that because I'm in the dating scene now. Well, I'm not really dating. We talked about it. I'm not in any rush to date, but I do look at some people. I'm like, is that the person I want to be with? That type person. Although, me, I've not bragging or stuff. I mean, I'll do whatever to get my.
Yeah, well, so
see what I'm saying? I'm trying to be a PG.
Yeah, and we're definitely we're not trying to come off as crude, but this is just the reality because this a lot of this really came into question around the sexual revolution in the 50s and 60s. Yeah. Right, where the basic premise was that blank slate equalism, men and women are the exact same, right? But the reality is a woman who sleeps around is more negatively impacted by it than a man that sleeps around, right?
Right.
And they're negatively impacted in how men look at them, right? But the opposite's true too, right? Rich Cooper talks about this, Rollo Tomasi, and this is stuff that I think we all knew intrinsically. We knew it, just never has defined it. But generally when it comes to males and females, men, you tend to look at a woman's past. And a woman is going to look at your future, right?
I think we've said it before.
Yeah, and it's so incredibly true. But so that's a big thing too, right? So if you're looking at my future, well, my past escapades, that I've for a lot of times my experience, and this is something women will never admit, but I can just tell you that if a man has gotten a lot of attention from a lot of women, that may say, oh, if it's flipped, that's not a good thing. But with men, it means he's desirable. It's almost like
a trophy status.
It's like proof of, like, he is desirable, right? If a man's 30 and whatever and is a virgin, now he's actually kind of it's almost looked at as weird, right? It means like, what's wrong with him? No one desires him.
What's wrong with him?
Right, he's not in demand, right? So it actually, and that's why you'll see relatively good girls, and I don't think there's any good girl or good guy, but those that have kind of maintained their purity marry a guy who may have been what's it called, a
pig or
womanizer or whatever negative stereotype you want to put on. They'll end up together and work out, right? Because because she's looking at his future, right? So there's a lot of, that's why that double standard exists, and it's never going away.
And a little small double standard into what you just said, I think a lot of women think, well, she took the guy that was the womanizer and turned him into an honest man. That's not really the case. The case is she sees the finish line,
but we all have seen that, like girls who you're thinking, gosh, she has so much to offer, and she's always with these dirt bags, these guys that the felons or the whatever that are just can't get their life. Yeah, that's another thing women won't. And I've had this conversation with women, but they won't admit. But there is that, like, I'm gonna try and change him.
Yeah.
Right. Now on the flip side, if as the guy you change to appease, right? Or, hey, I'm married now, I need to now be the married version of myself. Oftentimes the woman, she's going to grow bored of you.
Yeah.
Right? You can probably, we talked about that.
Yeah.
Beta ruined my marriage.
Yeah, because you go from the strong, masculine, I don't care attitude to, I can sleep with whoever I want, do whatever I want, to, okay, now I'm just all yours.
Yeah.
And whatever you want me to do, honey. And now you've just been dumbed down.
Well, you lose ambition, right?
And that's not, and like I said in the beta, that's not what they fall in love with. They fall in love with the chase, the purpose.
Yeah.
And once that purpose is accomplished.
Yeah, and I don't want to come off like I'm an expert on women, but I have observed. We're both like that. We like to observe. I would say the definition of intelligence is pattern recognition. I'm reading a book now, the Business of Expertise, and they were talking about that. So it's just looking at the world and noticing patterns.
Yeah, and seeing the trends that we see on a continuous basis, especially me.
Yeah.
I see it because, my eyes are a little wide open now because I'm on the search,
See, the reality is you're not on the search, though. You're on your mission, which is you are putting your dent in the universe, which is what is going to make you the most attractive.
Right.
As soon as you change, and now I've got to find someone. There's nothing is cringier or
more
less
desperate.
Attractive.
Yeah.
Things you chase tend to run away. Yeah. Women the exact same way, right? So that's why there are only double standards if we believe they're the exact same. And for men, I know a large percentage of our audience, and I've talked to women too, and when they have a moment of honesty, they'll admit it, like, I just got bored. I hear that all the time. I grew out of love, right? He's not the man I fell in love with, right?
Yeah. That's the most common I think I hear is, he's not the same person I fell in love with.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you changed him.
Yeah, or, you guys both just matured, you got married right out of college, and you've maybe outgrown them. You
right.
Know what I'm saying? That's why typically men are older than women in marriage, the ones that work out, right? We talked in I have a son now, he's going to be turning 3. First of all, I would say don't even sniff marriage, don't even think about it before age 30. Don't even think about it.
Yeah.
And a key difference is because men and women have different peaks. Right, they're at their peak, market value at different times. You're how old? What, 48 now?
48.
Right?
Yeah.
48, and you're still you're seeing, like, maybe while you're going through the divorce, you probably thought, I'm just an old guy. No one's going to pay me attention, and you're seeing the exact opposite. And you're starting to realize, man, you're aging like wine, right? You're a divorced dad of 3 kids. and you're still getting attention.
You're in my mind, Matt Dodge.
This is how I would feel.
Because
that's how a lot of men feel.
It's because when I sat there, and I think the first time is when I got into my condo. There was no one there. I sat on the couch, and I was thinking, I have nothing to offer anyone.
Why would anybody want?
Why would someone want? I'm too old.
You just got divorced. Your wife just told you weren't. I don't want to be with you anymore.
Yeah, which is very deflating.
It's a big kick to the ego.
And then I'm sitting there, I'm like, I have nothing to offer people. I have all this baggage, all these things that weigh me down. My negatives outweigh my positives. And then it just clicked. Yeah,
well, it's got to be, but and this is another thing that why, you know, the advice I'll give if I end up having daughters is going to be different from what I give to my son, right? Because for women, if we're honest with each other, the number one characteristic that men look at in women is beauty. Beauty, fertility, right? Are they, you know, if you're
what kind of kids are they going to produce?
If you're genetics, right? We look at the moms of the future spouse that we're considering, because it's, hey, that could be the future, right? No one can pick their parents, but you can pick your child's parents, right? So that's why we're selective. Women do the same thing, and not saying women don't care about looks, but it's not the number one, right? A guy with looks that is on welfare, that has nothing going on, sure, he might get some short-term attention, but he's going to have a hard time finding one that wants to commit to him, right? And so men tend to peak somewhere in the mid to upper 30s, right? It's when you're finally starting to hit your stride, you're starting to understand where you're valuable, you're starting to get competence in your career, your earning ability, right? And it continues to go up from there, but eventually, you know, it levels off. Whereas for women, they peak, and this isn't me saying this is hundreds of men, thousands of men are polled who they consider the most desirable, always falls around age 22 to 24, somewhere right there, which makes sense. That's when they're the hottest, they're in the best shape, right? They are, if I want to have children, they are like, that's what they're primed to do at that stage, right? So all that to say, we're different, right? And that's also why it's damaging and dangerous to tell a woman, look, you can have it all, right? Go to school, focus on you, girl, be an independent woman, build your career, and then find someone that can help complement your life, right? And then you can have your family later. The problem is you could still have a child right now. You could still whatever, get a girl pregnant if you wanted to. The flip side, a 48-year-old woman, not so much. At age 35, it's considered
high risk,
a geriatric pregnancy.
Yeah.
Right? And I've talked to a lot of women my age that are still not married, and they're freaking out, right? Because they have the career, but they know the time's ticking, and they're, I better make a move quick because I'm not going to be fertile forever, right? That's where I think this blank slate equalism, that is what happens on the ground, right? And there's a reason now marriage rates are at historical lows. Historical.
And if you guys agree or disagree, leave a comment down below. We'd like to read them. I mean, we want the feedback on this stuff.
And don't just say you guys are dumb or you don't know anything.
You don't know what you're talking about.
Give us a point, right? Yeah. This is that we're moving dirt right now. We're looking for golden nuggets, but these are just observations I've made.
Yeah, so, you know, please leave us a comment. But we talked about before, you know, the even slate was, you know, the fertility in the guys my age, or not the fertility, but the girls, the younger girls, opposed to the older gentlemen, because those girls are now, those younger girls look at an older guy like, well, he's security. He's got He's got
his
knowledge.
He's got his crap together.
So
he's earning money, right? He doesn't have $100,000 in student loans.
He's not one to go out drinking every night yet. Well, I don't know. Some guys I know do, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, he's living inside his own frame, and that's very, very attractive, right?
Yeah, so it becomes like a chick magnet type deal for that age, I guess.
It just is. Like I'm 34 now, and I thought men and women were the same, right? And when you're the most attractive, physically, that's when you're at your peak. It's not even close. It's completely different.
Yeah, because and the double standard on that is I look at.
You're not dating women your age.
No, I mean,
not even thinking about it.
Yeah, because it's just I'm not. It's not where I need to be. My maturity level, I guess, is a little.
No, it's not maturity. They've polled men anywhere from 18 to 70. They've all pinpointed that age, right?
Yeah.
You can't negotiate desire. You can't negotiate attraction. What is attractive is attractive, right? That's why there's old guys in nursing homes with dementia that still think they could get lucky with the 22-year-old nurse.
Yeah.
Right? It just is what it is.
Oh, God, am I going to be that guy?
Well, at least you won't remember it.
Yeah, that's true.
But, so, I guess when you call it a double standard, you are basically admitting men and women are the same. I don't think it's a double standard, right? I just think it is what it is. And if we're honest with ourselves, we understand it. It may not seem fair, but it only doesn't seem fair when you've kind of bought into that lie. And that's really what the quote-unquote red pill is, seeing the world for how it is. It took you going through a divorce and seeing, holy crap, like everything I thought was true, maybe not everything, but a lot of what I thought was true, turns out it's not, right? So I would recommend to just pay attention to this stuff. Now, let's segue a little bit, and how can you use double standards to your advantage? Is there a way to do that?
I think everything could be used to your advantage. It's the way you package it and how to use it. Mm-hmm. So I think double standards, I don't know. That's a really good question.
A double standard could be two guys same age. One's in really good shape, the other's not, right? The one in really good shape gets attention from women. The one who's not doesn't, right? He could think, this isn't fair. That's just because he's in shape. What he should say is, oh, I need to be in shape. It's not a double standard. That's just who they find. Turns out attractive things.
Maybe I should get up and run. What
women find attractive. And you talk to a ton of, you're going through a body transformation, and has it helped or hurt your ability, the looks you get?
It's definitely helped.
Yeah.
So I get more eyes.
It's just see the world for how it is. Another good example would be.
Except when I shave my beard off.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah, so another one would be that I notice if I go out and about wearing a t-shirt and a pair of shorts and I look bummy versus I put on button-up, I look a tailored button-up with a open collar with a sports coat, I get treated differently, right? Same person, two different standards.
Yeah.
Right? So instead of say it's not fair or this, we need to change, no, just use it to your advantage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's almost like you're saying, look at the double standard, learn from the double standard, adapt to the double standard.
Yeah. I don't trust, how do I put this? My brother was telling me about this. He doesn't trust humans. He trusts humans to be humans.
Yeah.
Right? Trust people to be people, right? So if you notice somebody, like don't get mad that women are attracted to men that earn more money. Right? Don't be mad at that and sit here and say, oh, like, well, it's lost. No, go earn more money, right? Focus on that. Now, at the same time, 22-year-old guy, the least valuable he's going to be, he maybe look good, but in terms of getting long-term commitment, 22-year-old female is at the most at her peak.
And I think we talked a little bit about this in Risk. At 22, I'm jumping off piers and I'm doing stupid stuff. And the results are still the same. The girls were like, oh, you're an idiot.
And I think it's like cool, but that's not someone I'm going to settle down with,
Yeah.
right? That's not someone, because they're looking to your future, right? Yeah. You're doing this. Is this someone that I can depend on to provide, to protect my family, to be the mature, responsible, yada. So women at that age, they're at their hottest, arguably, they're most fertile, the best they're going to like look. Now it's not like at 25 it's down, but it is a gradual decline.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of 22, 23-year-old men that get really frustrated. Like, what the heck? Why? I used to get attention back. Why don't I now? It's like, understand that I talk to dudes all the time, especially in the South. We think we need to get married young, have a family, white picket fence, all of that stuff. And they're sitting here 28, 29, and it's almost like their biological clock is ticking. I'm like, are you kidding me, dude?
You're only 30 years.
You're only getting more valuable, right? Do not cash out early, right? If you're trying to sell a house, you're not. It's better to have 10 offers than one, right? But if I have a house and I know there's a highway coming through, and suddenly that real estate's going to double in value in the next 10 years, I'm not going to be any rush to sell that house.
Yeah.
Right? The offers are only going to go up, right? We don't have a biological clock. I guess we do, but not in the same, the time frames aren't the same.
Yeah, I mean, especially when it comes to having babies. Look at Clint Eastwood. He was 70 years old when he had his last child.
Yeah.
You know, it's like...
It's just one of the facts of life, right? And I think instead of getting mad at it, calling it a double standard, this isn't fair, why can't I have it all? Look, for women, if you're going to be career focused and keep your head down and then wait till 30 to have it all, the reality is you're still going to want a really high value guy at that time, hypergamy, right? But the problem is you're now having to compete with 22, 23-year-olds.
Yeah.
If you don't believe me, you can go on these social media platforms and you see rants all the time saying this, right? Women who hit, I think Rollo calls it the epiphany stage, right? Where they're like, we're all the good guys, you know? But for the last 5, 6, 7 years, they had so much attention from any guy they wanted, right? Because they were at their peak.
Yeah.
Right? Your house is like the top of the real estate market. Why you gotta take that offer there. But, you know, there is and that's why birth rates are at all-time lows, right? It's not enough to sustain the population, and it's because, better or worse, there's more women in college right now, more women entering the workforce. Great, go become gainfully employed, but just know you are gonna, like, typically, from what my experience in talking with, they're sacrificing their most fertile, when they're gonna get, quote unquote, the best offer from the opposite sex, you're sacrificing that to do that, right?
And I kind of feel bad.
I feel for
women.
It breaks my heart
Because they're kind of like in this balancing act, like, you know, I want a career, but I also want, you know, a family. But it almost seems like they can't have both at times. But I mean, which they can.
You can't, but you can't.
But
right?
yeah, it's kind of like...
My wife gave birth, I was out of work for 2 days. Right, leading up to that, I was out of work no days. I wasn't carrying a child in my stomach, right? It would be foolish for me to think she was going to be able to be at her hot mode. You guys make babies inside your body. It's a superpower, right? It's not that's an amazing thing, but there are sacrifices.
Yeah.
Right? A man, it could take you a 15-minute ordeal, situation with a woman, and the baby could pop out of that.
Yeah.
Well, for a woman, it's completely different. Obviously, the changes that go to your body.
For
but then
40 weeks.
But it doesn't stop there. You have a baby for, at minimum, maybe the next 4 or 5 years. That is your focus, right? That child, right? And having a child, it's one of the greatest things ever. But I would be lying to you to say Allison and I are the exact same.
Yeah.
Right? Just have a baby. You remember how it was when you brought your first baby home?
Yeah, you'd be like...
The baby doesn't want you starting out.
Right. It needs
There's nothing you can do. They want mommy. They want to feed. It's stressful, right? But it's not anywhere near as stressful. And this is why I'm coming from my heart. It breaks my heart because I see women who are sold the dream of be a CEO and then worry about being, have your family later. well, Matt, there's scientific, what was it, Barbara Cochran or whatever that one on Shark Tank, you know, with the in vitro or whatever. I don't know how the science works, but I turn around and say, you know, that cost her $500,000 to conceive, right? Whereas, and it breaks my heart, right? They get us. I wish that sense of urgency could come early on, because I've seen my wife with a baby. It's the most beautiful thing ever, right? She is in
Because
her.
it is a natural. I mean, you think about that child was there for 40 weeks.
I mean, how much bigger of a connection can you have?
It's like that is
you grew a baby
a
inside
piece of you.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and ours is just.
You still, my connection with my son has grown, but for the first little while, I had very little connection with him. And I felt horrible, because I'd seen all the movies and seen all the things. Yeah, when my baby was born, life changed, and I was a changed man. And it happened, I was like, oh, this is great. But he didn't want anything to do with me. I don't have breasts, I couldn't feed him, right? What flipped for me was when I started doing his bath. It was weird, but I felt useful. And then I was like, oh, he's mine, you know. But up until that point, it felt really weird. So, I mean, men and women are different. And if you think they're the same, that's when the double standards are going to beat you up. And one more thing, okay, while we're on double standards. The people that say they hate double standards, they only hate the ones that don't benefit them, if we're honest.
Yeah. Very true.
A pretty girl that's let in at a nightclub doesn't get mad at the bouncer that he just let her skip 100 people in line.
It's those ones that got skipped. They get mad.
They do, but for men, we get it. Like,
I understand.
That ain't fit. You know, they're not going to be
Wait a minute.
They're not going to picket the outside of the bar. Let fat men in. No. I've been turned away. Like, dude, you look like a bum. You can't come in. Like, that ain't fair. No, just go. Put on better clothes.
Dress up. Be nicer looking. So, all right, guys. Well, if you got any benefit out of this, I hope you did. Please give us a big thumbs up. If you didn't,
if you're the unicorn out there that none of this applies to, let us know.
Yes, we want to hear comments down below on this too. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell. Matt, thank you so much, sir. Guys, we'll see you on the next video.